It begins with a simple question that no one else seems to ask. You're sitting at a family gathering, and someone makes a casual comment. Something everyone nods along to, something that sounds reasonable on the surface. But your mind catches something underneath, a contradiction, an assumption, a thread that, if you pulled it, would unravel the entire conversation. So you stay quiet, because you've learned that pulling that thread doesn't lead to enlightenment. It leads to silence, awkward glances, the subtle shift in energy that says, "There you go again, overthinking everything." And in that moment, something inside you deflates. Not dramatically, not visibly, just a quiet resignation that whispers, "No one here speaks my language." This is the silent grief of always being misunderstood. And if you've lived with it long enough, through decades of relationships, careers, family dinners, and sleepless nights, you know it's not about being smarter than anyone else. It's about being wired differently. And today, we're going to talk about what that does to a person over a lifetime. There's a particular kind of loneliness that comes with being a deep thinker. It's not the loneliness of being alone. It's the loneliness of being surrounded by people and still feeling like you're speaking a foreign language. You see patterns where others see coincidences. You ask why when others are satisfied with because. You feel the weight of contradictions that others seem comfortable ignoring. And slowly, over the years, you realize most people don't want depth. They want comfort. They want certainty. They want conversations that confirm what they already believe. But your mind doesn't work that way. It never has. You question. You probe. You sit with uncomfortable truths. And the world punishes you for it. Not with cruelty, but with something worse. Dismissal. You think too much. Why do you always have to complicate things? Can't you just enjoy the moment? And so you learn to smile and nod. You learn to keep your observations to yourself. You learn to translate your complex internal world into simple, digestible sentences that won't make others uncomfortable. You become fluent in a language that isn't yours, while your native tongue, the one that speaks in nuance and contradiction, and existential wonder, slowly atrophies from disuse. This is not introversion. This is not social anxiety. This is the psychological experience of chronic intellectual and emotional isolation, and it leaves a mark. Psychologists have a term for what happens when your internal experience consistently fails to match your external reality: cognitive dissonance. But for deep thinkers, it's more than that. It's what researcher Kazimierz Dąbrowski called positive disintegration, the painful process of outgrowing the worldviews you were handed. When you're a deep thinker, you don't just accept the narratives you're given. You examine them. You test them against reality. You notice when the emperor has no clothes, when the story doesn't add up, when everyone is pretending not to see what's obvious. And this creates a fundamental problem. You become alienated, not just from others, but from the shared reality that holds society together. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you've realized. And you can't pretend that surface-level explanations satisfy the questions that keep you awake at 3 a.m. So you develop what psychologists call a divided self. There's the version of you that exists in public, measured, filtered, careful not to go too deep. And then there's the real you, the one who lives in your head, who thinks thoughts you'll never speak aloud, who feels fundamentally alone even in a room full of loved ones. This division isn't weakness, it's adaptation, it's survival, but it comes at a cost. Here's what nobody tells you about being chronically misunderstood. The grief accumulates. Each time you censor yourself, each time you simplify your truth, each time you watch someone's eyes glaze over mid-sentence, it adds up. You've spent decades translating yourself into smaller versions. You've learned to laugh at jokes you don't find funny. You've nodded through conversations that felt intellectually suffocating. You've stayed silent when you had something meaningful to say because you knew it would land wrong. And maybe you've told yourself it doesn't matter, that you're fine, that this is just how life is. But late at night, when the house is quiet and there's no one to perform for, you feel it. The ache of never being fully seen. The exhaustion of always being the translator between your inner world and everyone else's. This is what grief looks like when it's not about death. It's about the death of connection. The death of the fantasy that someday someone will just get you without you having to explain. The death of the hope that you'll find your people, your tribe, the ones who speak your language fluently. And for many deep thinkers, especially as they age, there's an additional layer, the realization that it's too late, that you've spent your whole life waiting to be understood, and now you're running out of time. You've probably noticed that you can't enjoy things the way other people do. A beautiful sunset isn't just beautiful. It's beautiful and also temporary, which makes you think about impermanence, which leads to thoughts about mortality, which spirals into an existential reflection on the nature of time. Someone tells a heartwarming story, and while everyone else feels uplifted, you're thinking about the underlying dynamics, the things left unsaid, the complexity being flattened into a neat narrative. This isn't cynicism. This is the curse of depth. Your mind doesn't do surface level. It never learned how. And while others are experiencing joy, you're experiencing joy, plus analysis, plus awareness of the joy's fragility, plus guilt about not being able to just feel the joy without all the other layers. Psychologically, this is called metacognition. Thinking about thinking. And for deep thinkers, it's constant. You're not just living life, you're observing yourself living life, which creates a fundamental distance between you and direct experience. The irony is cruel. The very thing that makes you insightful, perceptive, and wise is the same thing that prevents you from experiencing the simple pleasures that seem to sustain everyone else. Let's talk about love. Because if you're a deep thinker who's always been misunderstood, your relationships have probably been complicated. Maybe you chose partners who seemed fascinated by your depth at first. But eventually, that fascination turned to frustration. Why do you have to analyze everything? Became a common refrain. Your need for meaningful conversation felt like pressure. Your questions felt like criticism. Your complexity felt like too much work. Or maybe you chose the opposite. Partners who were simple, stable, uncomplicated. And you told yourself that was good, that you needed someone to balance your intensity. But secretly, you felt lonely even in their presence. You missed having someone who could meet you in the depths, who wanted to explore ideas at 2 a.m., who didn't need you to make yourself smaller. Either way, you learned that being fully yourself was a risk. So you parceled yourself out in pieces. You showed them the parts you thought they could handle. You kept the rest, the questions, the doubts, the existential ponderings, to yourself. And you lived with the quiet knowledge that no one really knew you. Not fully. Not the way you desperately wanted to be known. At work, being a deep thinker often meant being simultaneously valued and alienated. You saw solutions others missed. You anticipated problems before they emerged. You understood systems and patterns and human behavior in ways that made you invaluable. But you also slowed things down. You asked uncomfortable questions. You couldn't just execute without understanding the why. You noticed when organizational values contradicted organizational behavior. And that made people nervous. So you were labeled difficult, overthinks things, not a team player. Or if you learned to mask it well enough, Brilliant. But that but contained everything unsaid. Everything about you that didn't fit, that made others uncomfortable, that violated the unspoken agreement to not look too closely at anything. You may have achieved success. You may have climbed ladders and earned respect. But you did it while feeling fundamentally out of place, like you were playing a game everyone else understood intuitively, while you had to consciously learn every rule. If you've lived a lifetime of being misunderstood, certain questions probably echo through your mind. Was I ever truly seen by anyone? Did I waste my life trying to fit into places I never belonged? What would my life have been if I'd found people who understood me? Is there something wrong with me, or something wrong with the world? These aren't idle thoughts. They're existential wounds, and they hurt more as you age because time makes everything feel more final. The relationships that ended, the conversations you never had, the parts of yourself you kept hidden, the community you never found. And there's a particular cruelty to reaching your later years still carrying this question. Will I die without ever being fully known? Here's what you need to understand. Being chronically misunderstood isn't evidence that something is wrong with you. It's evidence that you're operating on a different frequency than most people. And that's not a flaw. It's a fundamental difference in cognitive and emotional processing. Some people are wired for depth. They can't help but see beneath surfaces, question assumptions, and live with complexity. This is neurological as much as it is psychological. Research on high sensitivity, giftedness, and what psychologist Elaine Aron calls sensory processing sensitivity shows that approximately 15 to 20% of people have nervous systems that process information more deeply. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're just rare. And being rare in a world built for the common experience is inherently isolating. The tragedy isn't that you think differently. The tragedy is that you were taught to see your difference as a defect. That you spent decades trying to sand down your edges instead of finding the people who appreciated them. That you internalized other people's discomfort with your depth as evidence that you needed to be shallower. So what do you do with this understanding, especially if you're in the latter half of your life? How do you make peace with decades of misunderstanding? First, you grieve. Really grieve. Not in a performative way, but in the quiet, honest acknowledgement of what was lost. You grieve the connections that never formed. You grieve the versions of yourself you buried to fit in. You grieve the loneliness you carried silently for so long. That grief is valid. It doesn't matter that other people had it worse. It doesn't matter that you turned out fine. What matters is that your experience was real and painful and worthy of acknowledgement. Second, you stop waiting for others to understand you and start understanding yourself. You become the witness you always needed. You validate your own perceptions. You trust your own complexity. You stop translating yourself into smaller versions and start honoring the fullness of who you are, even if only in the privacy of your own mind. Third, you seek depth wherever you can find it. Maybe it's in books written by people who think like you do. Maybe it's in online communities where intellectual misfits gather. Maybe it's in therapy with someone trained to hold complexity. Maybe it's in finally writing down the thoughts you've kept silent your whole life. You're not looking for everyone to understand you anymore. You're looking for moments of true connection. Brief, rare, precious moments where someone sees you and doesn't flinch. You deserve to grow up in a world that celebrated your curiosity instead of pathologizing it. You deserved relationships where depth was welcomed, not tolerated. You deserve to feel at home in the conversations instead of constantly translating yourself. You deserve to hear someone say, "Tell me more. Go deeper." I want to understand how you see the world. You didn't get that, and that's not your fault. But here's what you can do now. You can say those things to yourself. You can be the person who asks you the questions no one else did. You can create internal space for your complexity instead of demanding that you simplify. This is not about fixing yourself. This is about finally, after all these years, coming home to yourself. There's something that people who've never felt chronically misunderstood don't realize. This experience gives you access to depths they'll never know. Your isolation forced you to develop a rich inner world. Your questions led you to insights that comfort seekers will never find. Your inability to accept easy answers made you wise in ways that can't be taught. You've spent your life as an observer, a questioner, a seeker. And while that's been lonely, it's also been profound. You've seen things others miss. You've understood things others avoid. You've lived with complexity while others chose simplicity. That matters. Your perspective matters. The thoughts you kept to yourself matter, even if no one ever fully understood them. You may never find the community you dreamed of. You may never have the conversations you longed for. You may reach the end of your life still feeling like a stranger in a strange land. But you can find a different kind of peace. The peace of self-acceptance. The peace of knowing you weren't wrong for being different. The peace of honoring your depth instead of apologizing for it. And maybe, just maybe, you'll have a few moments before the end where someone looks at you and really sees you. Where the loneliness breaks for just a second and you feel what you've always wanted to feel. Understood. That moment may be brief, but it will be real. And it will have been worth the wait. You've carried the silent grief of being misunderstood for so long that it's become part of your identity. But it doesn't have to define what's left. You can't change the past. You can't undo the isolation or recover the lost connections. But you can stop abandoning yourself the way others abandoned the real you. You can be the person who finally understands, who sees the depth and doesn't flinch, who asks the questions and wants the complex answers, who knows that thinking deeply isn't a flaw. It's a way of being fully alive. The world may never understand you, but you can understand yourself. And sometimes that has to be enough. Not because it's fair, but because it's all we have. And because even in that small space of self-understanding, there's a kind of homecoming. A quiet recognition that whispers, you were never wrong. You were just rare. And rare things are lonely, but they're also precious. So if you've spent your life feeling misunderstood, know this. Your grief is real. Your loneliness is valid. And your depth, the very thing that isolated you, is also your greatest gift. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You just need to stop betraying yourself by pretending to be less than you are. That's not fixing. That's not performing. That's finally, after all these years, coming home.